There are moments in life when a single sentence spoken by a child can shatter the careful illusions adults construct to protect themselves from uncomfortable truths. I learned this on a Tuesday morning at San Francisco International Airport, standing beside my husband Gerald in the departures area, waving goodbye to our daughter Christine as she passed through security. Our granddaughter Lily, just 7 years old, had been unusually quiet during the drive to the airport, her small fingers twisted together in her lap, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. I attributed it to the early hour and the sadness of saying goodbye to her mother for 2 weeks. I was wrong about everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The trouble had started 3 months earlier, though I didn't recognize it as trouble at the time. Christine had called one evening, her voice carrying that particular brightness that mothers use when asking for favors they know might be inconvenient. She needed help, she explained. A work opportunity in Singapore, 2 weeks of intensive training that could lead to a promotion she'd been chasing for years. Her husband Marcus would be traveling simultaneously for his own job, some conference in Boston that had been scheduled for months. Would Gerald and I consider staying at their house in Mill Valley to watch Lily? Of course we would. We'd raised 3 children of our own, survived their teenage years and sent them into the world as functional adults. Caring for one sweet 7-year-old granddaughter seemed less like a burden and more like a gift, a chance to be actively needed again in our comfortable, but sometimes purposeless retirement. Gerald had recently sold his dental practice after 40 years of peering into mouths and lecturing patients about flossing. I'd left my position as a school librarian 2 years prior, trading daily structure for the flexible freedom that left me occasionally restless. 2 weeks with Lily sounded perfect. Christine arrived at our Sausalito home the following Saturday with details and instructions. She spread papers across our kitchen table, while Lily played in the backyard with our elderly golden retriever, Biscuit. School pickup procedures, emergency contacts, dietary restrictions we didn't know existed, after-school activities that filled every afternoon with purpose. Ballet on Mondays and Wednesdays, swimming on Tuesdays and Thursdays, art class on Fridays. A schedule that seemed designed to prevent a child from ever experiencing boredom or unstructured time. Gerald studied the calendar with the same intensity he'd once used reviewing dental charts. This is quite a lineup, he observed mildly. Does she enjoy all these activities? Christine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course she does. These are crucial years for development. We want Lily exposed to everything so she can discover her passions early. I caught something in her tone, a defensiveness that seemed disproportionate to Gerald's gentle question, but I dismissed it. Christine had always been our most driven child. The one who color-coded her high school notebooks and maintained perfect attendance from kindergarten through college. It made sense she'd approach motherhood with the same rigorous standards she applied to everything else. The conversation shifted to practical matters. Keys, alarm codes, the veterinarian's number in case Biscuit had another episode with his arthritis. Marcus would be leaving for Boston 3 days before Christine's Singapore departure, she explained, so they'd drop Lily off at our place for those nights. Then we'd all go to the airport together to see Christine off before taking Lily back to Mill Valley for the remainder of the 2 weeks. How's Marcus feeling about the timing? Gerald asked. 2 work trips overlapping must create some logistical stress. Christine's expression flickered with something I couldn't quite identify. He's fine with it. We're both fine. These opportunities don't come along often. We have to take them when we can. The conversation moved on, but that flicker stayed with me. I'd known Christine for 32 years, had watched her navigate childhood disappointments and adult challenges with the same determined optimism. This brittle quality was newer, a hardness around the edges that worried me more than I wanted to admit. When Marcus arrived to collect them an hour later, I studied him with fresh attention. He'd always been handsome in an approachable way, the kind of man who looked equally comfortable in a business suit or coaching youth soccer. Today he seemed tired, shadows under his eyes suggesting insufficient sleep. He greeted us warmly enough, listened as Christine reviewed details she'd already covered, but his attention kept drifting toward Lily playing in the yard. The 3 days before Christine's departure passed in a pleasant blur of granddaughter time. Lily arrived with her small suitcase and her favorite stuffed elephant, a worn creature named Peanut who'd been her constant companion since infancy. She settled into our guest room with an ease that suggested she felt safe here, comfortable in a way that filled me with quiet pride. We baked cookies, took biscuit for slow walks along the waterfront, read chapter books before bed. She was a delightful child, imaginative and affectionate, with Christine's quick mind and Marcus's easy laugh. But there were odd moments that I noticed only in retrospect. The way she tensed when Christine called to check in each evening. The careful way she answered questions about home, her responses oddly formal for a 7-year-old. The nightmare the second night that had her crying out for her mother, then insisting she was fine when I came to comfort her, that it was just a bad dream about monsters, nothing specific, nothing to worry about. On the morning of Christine's departure, we arrived at her Mill Valley house at 5:30 to collect last-minute items and make the drive to the airport as a family. Marcus had already left for Boston the previous evening, his goodbye to Lily conducted via video call that Christine had supervised with phone in hand, coaching their daughter through her tears. The house felt different at that early hour, sterile somehow despite the expensive furnishings and carefully curated family photos on every surface. Christine moved through rooms with checklist efficiency, her carry-on already packed and waiting by the door, her outfit carefully chosen to project professional competence. She'd been preparing for this trip for weeks, talking about little else during our Sunday phone calls, but now that departure was imminent, I sensed an almost frantic quality to her energy. Lily sat at the kitchen island eating cereal with mechanical bites, her eyes following her mother's movements. I sat beside her, keeping up cheerful conversation about the fun we'd have together, the places we'd explore, but she responded in monosyllables, her usual spark dimmed. "Are you feeling okay, sweetheart?" I asked quietly. "Your tummy isn't upset from the early morning?" She shook her head, setting down her spoon. "I'm okay, Grandma. Just tired." Christine appeared in the kitchen doorway, checking her watch. "We should get going. Traffic will be terrible if we wait any longer." The drive to the airport was tense in ways I couldn't quite articulate. Gerald navigated the pre-dawn traffic while Christine made phone calls from the passenger seat, her voice professional and distant. In the back, Lily sat in her booster seat between her small overnight bag and Peanut the elephant, staring out the window at the dark highway sliding past. I reached over to squeeze her hand. "2 weeks will go by so fast," I promised. "Before you know it, your mom will be home with stories about Singapore and presents for you." Lily looked at me with eyes that seemed too old for her small face. What if she doesn't come back? The question hung in the air, so unexpected that I almost missed Christine's reaction in the front seat. Her whole body went rigid, her phone conversation faltering mid-sentence before she recovered and continued as if nothing had happened. "Of course I'm coming back," Christine said too loudly once she'd ended her call. "Don't be silly, Lily. This is just a work trip. I'll be home before you even miss me." But the tightness in her voice suggested something else entirely, a brittleness that made my grandmother instincts flare with concern. I glanced at Gerald, who met my eyes in the rearview mirror with a slight frown. He'd heard it too. At the airport, Christine moved through check-in and security procedures with practiced efficiency while Gerald found parking. I stayed with Lily in the departures area, watching travelers rush past with their rolling suitcases and travel pillows, their faces showing every emotion from excitement to exhaustion to grim resignation. Christine emerged from the check-in counter with boarding pass in hand, her professional mask firmly in place. She knelt before Lily, smoothing her daughter's hair with hands that trembled slightly. "You be good for Grandma and Grandpa, okay? Follow all the rules, do your homework, practice your ballet." Lily nodded, her small face solemn. "When will you call?" "Every day," Christine promised. "Morning and night if the time difference allows. And I'll bring you back something special from Singapore." "What would you like?" "For you to stay home." The words came out so quietly I almost didn't hear them. Christine's face crumpled for just an instant before she reassembled her composure. "Oh honey, we talked about this. Mommy has to work. This is important for our future, for giving you all the opportunities you deserve." Gerald appeared then, slightly out of breath from his hurried walk from the parking structure. "Everything ready?" he asked with forced cheerfulness. Christine stood, brushing invisible wrinkles from her slacks. "Yes, all set." She hugged Gerald briefly, then turned to me. "Thank you both for doing this. I know it's a lot to ask." "Family isn't an imposition," I replied. pulling her into an embrace that she accepted but didn't quite return. "We're happy to help." She picked up her carry-on, adjusted her shoulder bag, checked her watch again. "I should get through security. The line might be long." We walked with her as far as we could, that awkward zone before the security checkpoint where travelers must say their final goodbyes. Christine hugged Lily one more time, holding her daughter close in a way that seemed almost desperate. "I love you so much," she whispered into Lily's hair. "Be brave, okay? Be my brave girl." Then she was gone, joining the line of travelers removing shoes and laptops, becoming just another businesswoman heading toward an international gate. We stood watching until she passed through the metal detectors and collected her belongings on the other side. She turned once to wave, her smile bright and brittle as glass, before disappearing into the secure area. "Well then," Gerald said with determined optimism, "how about we get some breakfast before heading back? I saw a pancake place on the way in." I looked down at Lily, expecting to see tears or at least sadness at her mother's departure. Instead, her small face had gone very still, very pale. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her hand found mine and gripped it with surprising strength. "Grandma," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to leave. Right now." The urgency in her tone made me crouch down to her level. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you feeling sick?" She shook her head, her eyes darting around the busy terminal as if searching for something or someone. "Please, I need to tell you something but not here. Can we go to the car?" Gerald and I exchanged concerned looks. He nodded toward the exit. "Let's get to somewhere quieter." We made our way through the crowded terminal, Lily pressed against my side, her grip on my hand never loosening. Gerald led us back through the parking structure to where we'd left our SUV on the 4th level. Only when we were safely inside with doors closed did Lily finally speak. "Mom's not coming back." Her voice was matter of fact, eerily calm for such a devastating statement. "She's leaving Dad. That's why she really went away." The words landed like physical blows. Gerald twisted in the driver's seat to face her. "Lily, honey, what makes you think that? I heard them fighting." Lily's composure began to crack, tears welling in her eyes. "Lots of times. Late at night when they thought I was sleeping. Mom said she couldn't do it anymore. She said she felt trapped. She said Singapore was her escape." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Are you certain that's what you heard?" "Sometimes adults argue, but it doesn't mean divorce or leaving." Lily reached into her small backpack and pulled out a piece of paper, folded multiple times into a small square. "She found this in Mom's office 3 days ago. She gave it to me and made me promise not to tell anyone until after she left." I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was a letter, written in Christine's distinctive handwriting, addressed to Marcus. The words blurred as I tried to process what I was reading. Phrases jumped out like accusations. "Can't pretend anymore. Need to find myself again. Lily deserves better than parents who are just going through the motions. The Singapore job is real, but it's also an exit. By the time you read this, I'll have made my decision about whether to come back." Gerald leaned over to read it, his face draining of color. This can't be real. Christine wouldn't just abandon her family. But even as he said it, I thought about all the signs I'd dismissed. Christine's brittle energy, her defensiveness about the trip, the way she'd clutched Lily at the airport with desperate intensity, the flicker of something dark when Marcus's name came up. How had I missed it? How had I failed to see my own daughter's unhappiness? Lily's tears flowed freely now. "She made me promise not to tell until she was gone. She said you'd try to stop her if you knew. But I'm scared, Grandma. What if she really doesn't come back? What about Dad? What about me?" I pulled her into my arms, this small child carrying a burden no 7-year-old should bear. Gerald's hand found my shoulder. The 3 of us huddled together in the parking garage while around us normal people went about normal travel days, unaware that our family was fracturing in real time. "We need to call Marcus," Gerald said finally. "He needs to know what's happening." "No." Lily pulled back from my embrace, her face fierce through her tears. "Mom said Dad already knows. That's why he really went to Boston. They're separating. They just didn't want to tell anyone yet. They didn't want people to judge them or try to fix things." Mom said some things can't be fixed, they just need to end. The parking garage suddenly felt suffocating, the concrete walls pressing in. My daughter, my firstborn child who I'd held moments after her birth and guided through every milestone, was somewhere in this airport preparing to board a flight that might take her away from her family permanently. And she'd used us, used our love and trust and willingness to help, as cover for her escape. What do we do? I asked Gerald, my voice breaking. What do we possibly do with this? He was quiet for a long moment, his hand still on my shoulder, his eyes on Lily's tear-stained face. We take our granddaughter home. We keep her safe. We figure out the rest as we go. But nothing about this felt like something we could figure out. This wasn't a problem with a clear solution. Wasn't a crisis that could be managed with lists and procedures. This was betrayal and abandonment wrapped in business travel, and punctuated by a child's tears. This was my daughter choosing flight over fight, choosing herself over the family she'd created. Can we get ice cream? Lily asked in a small voice. I know it's early, but I really want ice cream. The absurdity of the request, the childish simplicity of seeking comfort in sugar and cold sweetness, nearly broke me. Of course we can get ice cream. We can get whatever you want. Gerald started the car, and we pulled out of the parking structure into the emerging morning light. The airport receded behind us, its towers and terminals holding the secret of my daughter's departure, her possible desertion. Somewhere in that massive complex, Christine was boarding her flight, leaving not just geographically but perhaps permanently, putting an ocean and a decision between herself and the life she'd built. And we were driving away with the granddaughter she'd left behind, heading toward an ice cream shop at 7 in the morning, pretending that frozen desserts could somehow make this bearable, pretending we had any idea how to navigate the catastrophe our family had just become. The silence in the car was broken only by Lily's occasional sniffles and the rhythm of traffic around us. I held her hand in the back seat, this child who'd been forced to carry adult secrets, who'd been made complicit in her own mother's abandonment. Whatever came next, whatever truth emerged from the wreckage of Christine's marriage, my priority was clear. Lily needed protection, stability, truth spoken in age-appropriate ways, and the assurance that whatever her parents decided, she would always be loved. But first, ice cream. Because sometimes the only response to devastation is to embrace the small absurdities that make life bearable. Sometimes you sit in an ice cream parlor at 7 in the morning with your traumatized granddaughter and your shell-shocked husband, and you eat chocolate chip mint while the world rearranges itself into shapes you don't recognize. Sometimes that's all you can do. The ice cream parlor Gerald found was one of those aggressively cheerful places that opened early to catch airport traffic and families with young children. Bright colors assaulted the walls, cartoon characters smiled from every surface, and perky music played at a volume clearly designed to energize rather than soothe. We were the only customers at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning, which felt both fortunate and deeply sad. Lily ordered a waffle cone with strawberry ice cream, rainbow sprinkles, and gummy bears. Gerald got plain vanilla in a cup, his choices always running toward the uncomplicated. I asked for coffee, my stomach too turbulent for anything solid, then changed my mind and ordered the same as Lily. Some moments called for throwing caution and breakfast norms entirely out the window. We sat in a corner booth, as far from the cheerful music as possible. Lily ate her ice cream with focused intensity, each bite deliberate, as if the act of eating required her full concentration. Gerald and I exchanged looks over her bent head, entire conversations happening in the space between glances. What now? What next? How do we possibly handle this? After several minutes of silence broken only by spoons against paper cups, Gerald cleared his throat. Lily, sweetheart, I want to make sure I understand everything correctly. Your mom gave you that letter and asked you to keep it secret until after she left? Lily nodded without looking up from her ice cream. She said it was grown-up stuff that kids shouldn't have to worry about. But then why did she tell me? Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached across the sticky table to cover her small hand with mine. Sometimes adults make mistakes. They put burdens on people who shouldn't have to carry them. Your mom shouldn't have asked you to keep that secret. But she's my mom. Lily's eyes, so much like Christine's, filled with fresh tears. If I tell people her secrets, won't she be mad at me? The question revealed the impossible position Christine had created. She'd made her 7-year-old daughter complicit in her exit strategy, created a loyalty trap that ensured Lily's silence and cooperation. It was manipulative in a way I'd never imagined my daughter capable of, and it made me wonder what else I'd been blind to over the years. "Your mom won't be mad at you," I said with more certainty than I felt. "And even if she is, that's something Grandpa and I will handle. You did exactly the right thing by telling us. Keeping scary secrets isn't your job." Gerald pulled out his phone, staring at the screen as if willing it to provide answers. "I think I need to call Marcus. He deserves to know we know, even if Christine already told him about the separation." Lily's spoon clattered against her cup. "Please don't tell Dad I told you. Mom said he'd be really upset if anyone found out before they were ready to announce it. She said it would make everything harder for everyone." I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and unfamiliar. My daughter had orchestrated this nightmare with frightening precision, using her own child as both messenger and shield, ensuring everyone stayed silent and cooperative while she made her escape. This wasn't the Christine I knew, or perhaps it was, and I'd been too willing to see only what I wanted to see. "Lily," Gerald said gently, "sometimes what adults call making things harder actually means telling the truth. And the truth is usually better than secrets, even when it's painful. But what if telling ruins everything? What if it's my fault they get divorced?" The weight of that fear, the crushing responsibility she'd been carrying, made me want to drive straight back to the airport and drag Christine off her flight regardless of consequences. Instead, I slid around the booth to sit beside Lily, pulling her against my side. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, tilting her chin up so she had to meet my eyes. "If your parents separate or divorce, it will be because of choices they made as adults. Nothing you say or don't say, nothing you do or don't do will cause or prevent that. This is not your responsibility. Do you understand?" She nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering. 7 years of life hadn't been enough to build the emotional armor needed to truly believe she wasn't at fault for her parents' failures. "We need a plan," Gerald said, ever the practical one. "Christine's flight leaves in about 2 hours if it's on time. By tonight she'll be in Singapore. We have Lily for 2 weeks. Marcus is in Boston. We need to figure out how to handle this situation with minimal additional trauma to Lily." I appreciated his attempt at structured thinking, at reducing catastrophe to manageable steps. But some situations resisted neat solutions. How do you minimize trauma when a child has just learned her mother might abandon her? How do you create stability when the foundation has already cracked? "We take it one day at a time," I said finally. "Today we get through today. We go back to our house, we let Lily rest, we call Marcus and explain what we know. Then we go from there." "What about Mom's job?" Lily asked suddenly. "If you tell everyone, will she get in trouble at work? Will she lose the promotion?" The fact that she was worried about her mother's career advancement, while her own security crumbled, demonstrated how thoroughly Christine had trained her daughter to prioritize external success over internal well-being. It was a mirror of Christine's own upbringing, I realized with sick recognition. Had I done this? Had my emphasis on achievement and accomplishment created a daughter who valued career over family? "Your mom's job will be fine," Gerald assured her. "Adults handle work situations separately from family situations." But that was a lie, and we all knew it. Everything was connected. Christine's ambition, her marriage troubles, her choice to use a work trip as an escape route, Lily caught in the middle of adult decisions that would shape her childhood and probably her entire life. Nothing existed in isolation, no matter how much we pretended otherwise. We finished our ice cream in heavy silence. Lily had stopped eating halfway through, the initial comfort of sugar giving way to the persistent reality of her situation. Gerald disposed of our cups and napkins while I helped Lily wash sticky residue from her hands in the bathroom. In the mirror, I caught sight of my own face and barely recognized it. I looked older than I had that morning, wearier, as if the weight of knowledge had physically aged me. The drive back to Sausalito should have been beautiful. The morning had turned clear and bright, fog burning off to reveal the bay sparkling in sunlight. The Golden Gate Bridge stretched red and magnificent against blue sky, tourists already gathering at vista points to take photographs. It was the kind of California morning that made people understand why they paid impossible housing prices to live here. But I saw none of it. My mind was consumed with questions that had no good answers. When had Christine's marriage started failing? How had I missed the signs of her unhappiness? What kind of mother uses her daughter as a secret keeper in her own abandonment? And most pressingly, what were we supposed to do now? Gerald pulled into our driveway and killed the engine. For a moment we all just sat there, as if entering the house would make everything real in a way that sitting in the car somehow didn't. Biscuit's face appeared in the front window, tail wagging at our return, oblivious to the crisis unfolding in the driveway. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't move toward the door. Are you going to call my dad now? Gerald twisted to look at her. Would you prefer we wait? Give you some time to settle in first? She considered this with the same serious expression she'd worn in the airport parking garage. No, I think you should call him. I think everything should just happen now instead of waiting and worrying. The wisdom in her answer, the exhausted acceptance that waiting wouldn't improve the situation, struck me as both mature and heartbreaking. She should have been worried about second-grade homework and playground politics, not managing her emotional response to her parents' disintegrating marriage. Inside, Biscuit greeted us with his usual enthusiasm, tail creating a rhythmic thump against the entryway wall. Lily knelt to hug him, burying her face in his golden fur, and he stood patient and still in that way old dogs do, as if understanding his purpose at that moment was to be a soft, warm presence asking nothing in return. Why don't you take Biscuit to the backyard? I suggested. He probably needs to go out and you could play with him for a bit while Grandpa and I make some phone calls. Lily nodded, standing and clipping Biscuit's leash to his collar with practiced ease. Before she headed toward the back door, she turned to face us, her expression solemn. Thank you for believing me. I was scared you wouldn't. The fact that she'd feared we wouldn't believe her, that she'd carried that uncertainty on top of everything else, made me want to gather her up and promise that we would always believe her. But I'd already learned today that some promises were too large to make with confidence. We will always listen to you, I said instead. And we will always do our best to keep you safe. After she disappeared into the backyard with Biscuit, Gerald and I stood in the kitchen staring at each other. His face showed the same shell-shocked confusion I felt. The sense that the world had tilted sideways and we were still trying to regain our balance. I should call Marcus, he said, though he made no move toward his phone. What are you going to say? I have no idea. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. A gesture of frustration I knew well from 42 years of marriage. How do you tell a man that his wife is leaving him and his mother-in-law knows about it before he does? Maybe he already knows everything, I suggested. Lily said Christine told her Marcus was aware of the separation. Maybe this won't be a surprise to him. But we both knew that whether Marcus knew about the separation and whether he knew Christine might not come back from Singapore were two very different pieces of information. The first was a mutual decision, however painful. The second was abandonment. Gerald pulled out his phone and scrolled to Marcus's contact. Before he could dial, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. We both stared at the screen as if it were a snake that might strike. Marcus's name glowed there, his timing either perfect or terrible depending on perspective. Gerald answered on speaker. Marcus, we were just about to call you. There was a pause, and when Marcus spoke his voice sounded strained. I got a weird text from Christine about 10 minutes ago. Something about making sure Lily stays with you all for the full 2 weeks regardless of what I might hear. What's going on? Is Lily okay? She's fine physically, Gerald said carefully. She's in the backyard with Biscuit. But Marcus, we need to talk about something. This morning at the airport after Christine left, Lily told us some things. She gave us a letter. Another pause, longer this time. What kind of letter? I took the folded paper from my purse where I'd tucked it after reading it in the parking garage. I have it here. It's addressed to you, written by Christine. It talks about the marriage, about her feeling trapped, about Singapore being more than just a work trip. The silence that followed stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Marcus exhaled. A sound of such profound weariness that it seemed to come from somewhere deep in his soul. So she told Lily. Jesus. We agreed we wouldn't involve her until we'd figured things out. So you knew? I asked. You knew Christine was considering not coming back? We've been having problems for over a year, Marcus admitted. His words coming slowly as if each one cost him something. We tried counseling. It didn't help. Christine felt suffocated by suburban life, by motherhood, by me. She wanted out but didn't know how to say it. When the Singapore opportunity came up, we talked about it being a trial separation. Time for her to figure out what she wanted without the daily pressure of family obligations. Gerald and I exchanged stricken looks. A trial separation where one parent fled to another continent, while leaving their child behind sounded less like healthy space, and more like abandonment with permission. But why involve Lily? I demanded, unable to keep the anger from my voice. Why give her that letter? Why make her carry this? I don't know, Marcus said, frustration bleeding into his tone. That wasn't part of our agreement. We were supposed to tell Lily together after Christine came back, and we decided on next steps. Making her the messenger was not the plan. Then what was the plan? Gerald asked. Because from where we're standing, it looks like Christine used a work trip as cover to leave her family without having to face the consequences directly. That's not fair, Marcus protested, but without much conviction. Christine isn't a monster. She's struggling. She gave everything to her career and her family for years and she just burned out. She needed space to remember who she was before all the obligations. I understood burnout. I understood feeling lost in the demands of motherhood and career, the way identity could get subsumed into roles until you forgot where the roles ended and you began. What I didn't understand was using your child as collateral damage in your journey of self-discovery. Marcus, I said, trying to keep my voice level, what do you want us to do? Lily knows everything or thinks she does. She's terrified her mother won't come back. She's worried this is somehow her fault. We need to give her some stability and truth. I'll come back, Marcus said immediately. I can catch a flight tonight, be there by morning. Lily shouldn't have to process this with just you two, no offense. She needs her father. No offense taken, Gerald assured him. When can you get here? Let me make some calls. I'll text you flight details within the hour. After we hung up, Gerald and I stood in the kitchen listening to the sounds of Lily playing with Biscuit in the backyard. Her laughter carried through the open window, bright and innocent, the sound of a child momentarily distracted from disaster by the simple joy of a dog chasing a tennis ball. What have we walked into? Gerald asked quietly. What kind of mess is this? I thought about Christine as a little girl, how she'd always been intense and driven, how she'd cried when she got her first B grade in 4th grade math, how she'd pushed herself relentlessly toward every achievement and accolade. I'd been proud of her determination then. Had I encouraged it too much? Had I failed to teach her that being enough didn't require constant striving? That family and connection mattered more than titles and promotions? We walked into our daughter running away from a life she couldn't handle anymore, I said finally. And our son-in-law letting her go because he didn't know how to make her stay. And our granddaughter caught in the middle, collateral damage in their failure to figure out how to be married. The judgment in my words surprised me. I'd always prided myself on being understanding, on recognizing that marriages were complex and every relationship had depths outsiders couldn't see. But this situation felt different. This involved Lily, innocent and vulnerable, being used as a pawn in an adult game she hadn't asked to play. Gerald moved to the window, watching Lily throw the ball for Biscuit with mechanical repetition. We need to be careful not to vilify Christine. Whatever she's done, she's still Lily's mother. Turning Lily against her won't help anyone. He was right, of course. But being right didn't make it easier to swallow my anger at Christine's choices, at her cowardice in leaving a letter with a child instead of facing her husband directly, at her willingness to prioritize her own needs over her daughter's security. The morning stretched into afternoon. Marcus texted to confirm he'd booked a red-eye flight, would arrive at 8 the next morning. Lily came inside tired from playing, and we settled on the couch to watch movies, the three of us pretending normalcy while everything beneath the surface churned with unspoken tension. Twice, Christine called Lily's phone, the number we'd given her for emergencies or daily check-ins. Both times, Lily stared at the ringing phone without answering. The second time, I gently asked if she wanted to talk to her mom. I don't know what to say to her, Lily admitted. If I pretend everything's normal, I'm lying. If I tell her I know about the letter, she'll be mad I told you. I don't want to talk to her right now. The resignation in her voice, the exhaustion of being 7 years old and managing emotional complexities that defeated many adults, broke something in me. I pulled her close and let her curl against my side, her small body fitting perfectly in the curve of my arm, and we watched animated movies without really seeing them while the afternoon light faded toward evening. That night, tucking Lily into bed, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Grandma, what happens if Mom doesn't come back? Do I have to leave your house? Do I go live with just Dad? The logistics of custody and care weren't something I could answer, not without knowing what Christine and Marcus ultimately decided. But I could answer the underlying question, the real fear beneath the practical concerns. Whatever happens with your parents, you will always have a home with people who love you. Grandpa and I will always be here. Your dad will always be here. And your mom, even if she's figuring things out right now, loves you. Sometimes adults make choices that are hard to understand. Sometimes they have to fix themselves before they can be good parents. But none of that means you're not loved or wanted. She nodded, though I wasn't sure she believed me. How could she, when her mother had chosen to leave? When love apparently wasn't enough to make someone stay. After she fell asleep, I returned downstairs to find Gerald pouring 2 glasses of wine. We sat on the back porch in the darkness, biscuit at our feet, and tried to process the impossible day we just survived. Marcus arrived at our doorstep at 8:15 the next morning, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled despite being fresh from his suitcase, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual easy confidence had been replaced by something raw and uncertain. He stood on our porch holding a coffee cup from the airport, staring at the door as if he wasn't quite sure he should knock. Gerald opened it before he could decide. "Come in. Lily's still sleeping. She had a rough night." Marcus stepped inside, setting down his small carry-on bag with the careful movements of someone trying to control bigger emotions through precise actions. "Where is she? Can I see her?" "Of course, but let's talk first." I gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee?" He followed us, moving through our house with the familiarity of family, though everything about this visit was fundamentally different from the casual holiday gatherings and birthday celebrations that had characterized our relationship over the past 8 years. This wasn't a son-in-law stopping by for Sunday dinner. This was a man whose marriage had imploded and whose daughter had been caught in the blast radius. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Christine had spread out her careful instructions just days earlier, back when I'd believed this was simply a favor for our busy daughter. That version of reality felt impossibly distant now, separated from the present by the canyon of Christine's letter and Lily's desperate confession at the airport. "I read it," Marcus said without preamble, pulling out his phone and scrolling to show us a photo. "Christine emailed me the same letter she gave Lily. Apparently she wanted to make sure I understood her position clearly, in writing, with no room for misinterpretation." Gerald leaned forward to read the email. It was longer than the version Lily had carried, more detailed in its catalog of Christine's unhappiness. She described feeling erased by motherhood, diminished by the daily grind of school lunches and ballet carpools. She talked about her career stalling while Marcus's accelerated, about feeling like she'd sacrificed her ambitions for a family that didn't appreciate the cost. She wrote about the trip to Singapore not as an escape exactly, but as a necessary pause, a chance to remember who Christine Martinez had been before she became Christine Anderson, wife and mother. The words were articulate and self-aware in that particularly modern way, full of therapy language about boundaries and self-care and authentic living. They were also devastating in their clear-eyed assessment that the life she'd built no longer fit, if it ever had. "When did things get this bad?" I asked Marcus quietly. "When did she start feeling this way?" He set down his phone and rubbed his face with both hands. "Honestly, probably since Lily was born. Maybe before. Christine loved the idea of having a family, but the reality of it never quite matched what she'd imagined. She thought she could have it all, that she'd be the kind of woman who excelled at career and motherhood simultaneously without breaking a sweat. When it turned out to be harder than she expected, when sacrifices had to be made, she started resenting all of it. "Did you try to help?" Gerald asked, not accusingly but genuinely curious. "To take on more of the parenting responsibilities so she could focus on work?" Marcus laughed, a bitter sound without humor. "I tried everything. I went part-time at my job for 2 years when Lily was a toddler. I handled all the household management, all the scheduling, all the mental labor that usually falls on mothers." Christine still felt trapped. Because the truth is, it wasn't really about the division of labor. It was about her not wanting to be a mother at all, not in the daily reality of it. The words hung heavy in the morning air. Somewhere upstairs, Lily was sleeping, innocent of this particular conversation, unaware that her father was articulating what she'd probably sensed her whole life. That her mother loved her in theory but found the practice of motherhood suffocating. She does love Lily, Marcus added quickly, as if reading my thoughts. Please don't think she doesn't. But she loves her in this abstract way, like Lily is a concept rather than a person with needs and feelings. Christine wants to be the fun mom who shows up for big moments. Not the everyday mom who packs lunches and monitors homework, and sits through endless ballet recitals. I thought about all the activities Christine had Lily enrolled in, the packed schedule I'd commented on when she first asked us to watch our granddaughter. Had that been Christine's way of outsourcing motherhood? Filling Lily's time with structured activities led by other adults, so she wouldn't have to engage with the unstructured messiness of actual parenting? What happens now? I asked. With the marriage, with Lily, with all of it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee as if it might contain answers. Christine and I agreed before she left that we'd make a final decision after her 2 weeks in Singapore. If she comes back and wants to try again, really try this time with proper counseling and maybe medication for what I think is undiagnosed depression, then we'll attempt to save the marriage. If she doesn't, if she decides she needs to stay gone or wants to pursue a different life, then we start divorce proceedings. And Lily? Gerald pressed. What happens to her in either scenario? She stays with me, Marcus said with the first genuine firmness I'd heard in his voice. That's non-negotiable. If Christine wants partial custody, we can work out visitation, but Lily's primary home is with me. I won't let her grow up feeling abandoned by her mother. The irony of that statement, given that Lily already felt abandoned, seemed to escape him. Or maybe he understood it perfectly and was trying to prevent the feeling from becoming permanent reality. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, small and hesitant. We all turned toward the doorway as Lily appeared, her hair tangled from sleep, Peanut the elephant clutched in one arm. She stopped when she saw Marcus, her expression cycling through surprise, relief, and something more complicated that might have been guilt. Dad? Her voice was small, uncertain. You're supposed to be in Boston. Change of plans, sweetheart. Marcus stood and moved toward her, kneeling to her level. I needed to come see you to talk about some things. Is that okay? She nodded, launching herself into his arms with sudden fierceness, and he caught her and held on, his face pressing into her hair. Over her head his eyes met mine, and I saw the fear there. The desperate uncertainty of a parent trying to protect a child from damage already done. They moved to the living room, and I made a show of preparing breakfast to give them privacy while staying close enough to intervene if needed. Through the doorway I could see them sitting together on the couch, Lily tucked against Marcus's side in almost the exact position she'd occupied with me the day before. I know you know about Mom and me, Marcus said gently. Grandma and Grandpa told me you found the letter. Lily nodded against his chest. Are you mad at me? Mad at you? Why would I be mad at you? Mom said it was supposed to be a secret. That I wasn't supposed to tell anyone until you both were ready. Marcus's jaw tightened, anger flashing across his face before he controlled it. Your mom shouldn't have asked you to keep that secret. That was wrong of her. You did the right thing by telling Grandma and Grandpa. You should never have to carry grown-up secrets like that. But now everyone knows and it's all happening faster than it was supposed to. Lily's voice rose with distress. What if I ruined everything? What if Mom doesn't come back because I couldn't keep the secret? I moved to the living room doorway, unable to stay away while she voiced the fear that had been haunting her. Gerald followed, both of us drawn by the pain in her voice. Marcus pulled back to look at Lily directly, his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. If Mom stays in Singapore or decides not to come home, it will have nothing to do with you telling the secret. Nothing. This is about choices Mom and I have been making for a long time. You didn't cause this and you can't fix it. Do you understand? She nodded, but tears streamed down her face. I just want everything to go back to normal. I want Mom to come home and everyone to stop being sad and for things to be like they used to be. The aching simplicity of the wish, the child's desperate desire to rewind time to before everything fell apart, made my chest tight. Gerald moved to sit on Lily's other side, and I joined them. The four of us crowded onto the couch in a tableau of shared grief and uncertain future. Sometimes normal changes, Gerald said quietly. Sometimes the way things used to be can't be the way things are anymore. But that doesn't mean the new normal can't also be good. Different but still good. Lily leaned against him, exhausted by emotions too large for her small body. Can I stay here with you and Grandma? For all 2 weeks like Mom planned? I don't want to go home yet. Marcus looked at us over her head, a silent question in his eyes. Of course you can stay here, I assured her. As long as you need to. I'll stay too, Marcus decided. If that's okay with you both. I can work remotely, and I think Lily needs both her dad and her grandparents right now. We nodded agreement, and so it was settled. Our quiet retirement home would become temporary headquarters for our fractured family. All of us suspended in the waiting period Christine had created by fleeing halfway around the world. The next few days established a strange new routine. Marcus took over the guest room while Lily kept her room, and Gerald and I adjusted to having our house full in ways we hadn't experienced since our own children were young. We fell into rhythms of meal preparation and homework supervision, of morning coffee on the porch and evening board games, all of us skating carefully around the absence at the center of everything. Christine called every day, sometimes twice, always when she knew Lily would be awake despite the significant time difference. The first few times Lily refused to answer, anxiety freezing her each time the phone rang. Marcus didn't force it, letting her come to readiness on her own timeline. On the 4th day she finally picked up. I watched from the kitchen doorway as she held the phone to her ear, her small face carefully neutral. Hi, Mom. Her voice was flat, giving away nothing. Singapore is good. Yeah, Grandma and Grandpa's house is nice. Dad came too. He's staying here with us. A pause while Christine responded, her voice a tinny sound I couldn't quite make out from where I stood. I don't know. School is fine. Ballet is fine. Everything is fine. Another long pause. Okay. Bye, Mom. She ended the call and set the phone down with exaggerated care, as if it might shatter if handled roughly. Then she looked up at me with eyes too old for her face. She asked if I was having fun. If I was having fun. Like this is summer camp instead of my life falling apart. Marcus appeared from the hallway where he'd been hovering. What did she say about me being here? Lily shrugged. Just that she hoped we were all being patient with each other, and remembering to use our kind words. The therapy speak, the careful emotional management language, would have been funny in a different context. In this one, it felt like Christine was performing the role of concerned mother while actively abandoning the actual work of mothering. Over dinner that evening, Marcus seemed particularly quiet. He'd been on his laptop most of the afternoon, taking video calls in the backyard where Lily couldn't hear. Now he pushed food around his plate with mechanical movements, clearly distracted by thoughts he wasn't ready to share. What is it? I asked after Lily had been excused to play with Biscuit. You've been somewhere else all day. He set down his fork and looked at both of us with an expression that combined resignation and bitter humor. Christine emailed this morning. She's been offered a permanent position in Singapore. 6-figure salary, executive title, opportunity to build their Asia-Pacific division from the ground up. Everything she's been working toward for years. Gerald and I exchanged glances. When would this start? Immediately. Well, after the 2-week training period ends. She could sign the contract and just stay there instead of coming home. My stomach dropped. Stay there? As in not come back at all? That's not decided yet, Marcus said quickly. She's asking what I think. How I'd feel about making it permanent, about working out custody arrangements that would have Lily splitting time between California and Singapore, about redefining what our family looks like. Splitting time? I repeated, my voice sharper than intended. She wants a 7-year-old to fly back and forth across the Pacific Ocean like some kind of corporate custody arrangement? It's not that simple, Marcus protested, but weakly. This is the opportunity Christine's been chasing. Her entire career. She's brilliant at what she does, and this job would let her finally prove it on an international stage. At what cost? Gerald asked quietly. At the cost of her daughter's stability? Her education? Her relationship with the parent who actually wants to raise her? Marcus flinched. Christine wants to raise Lily. She just wants to do it differently than traditional models suggest. There's nothing traditional about asking a child to commute between continents, I said, trying to keep my anger in check. There's nothing progressive or enlightened about prioritizing career advancement over your daughter's emotional well-being. Marcus dropped his head into his hands. I know. Trust me, I know. But what am I supposed to do? Tell her she can't take the job? Force her to come home to a marriage she doesn't want and a life that makes her miserable? How does that help anyone? The question had no good answer. Forcing Christine home would only create a different kind of damage, the slow poison of resentment and regret that would inevitably leak onto Lily in 1,000 small ways. But letting her go, facilitating her permanent departure with complicated custody arrangements, would leave Lily with a different wound, the knowledge that her mother had chosen ambition over daily presence. What do you want? Gerald asked Marcus. Setting aside what Christine wants or what might be fairest to everyone, what do you actually want? Marcus looked up, and the raw pain in his face was difficult to witness. I want my wife back. The woman I married who laughed easily and made plans for our future, and believed we could build something meaningful together. But that woman doesn't exist anymore, or maybe she never did and I was just seeing what I wanted to see. So what I want doesn't matter because it's already gone. The grief in his admission hung heavy in our dining room. Outside, we could hear Lily laughing at something Biscuit had done, the sound bright and innocent against the darkness we were discussing. You need to tell her no, I said finally. Not about the job, but about the custody arrangement. Lily is 7 years old. She needs stability, routine, a home that doesn't change. She needs to know where she belongs. But if I say no, Christine might choose to stay in Singapore anyway. Marcus's voice broke slightly. She might give up custody entirely rather than come home. And then what? Lily grows up knowing her mother chose a job over her? How is that better? It's not better, Gerald said quietly. None of this is better. It's all various shades of terrible. But at least if Christine makes that choice clearly, Lily will eventually understand it wasn't her fault. Whereas if you facilitate this split custody arrangement, Lily will spend years being shuttled back and forth, never quite belonging anywhere, always feeling like she's in the wrong place, missing the other parent. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You're asking me to give Christine an ultimatum. Come home and be a mother, or stay in Singapore and lose custody. That's what you're saying. I'm saying that Lily deserves parents who put her first, I replied. And if Christine can't or won't do that, then you need to be the parent who does. Even if it means making hard choices that Christine won't like. He stood at the window for a long time, watching Lily play with Biscuit in the fading light. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear him. I'll email her tonight. Set clear boundaries about custody. But I need you both to understand something. When this is over, when Christine decides whether to come home or stay in Singapore, when the lawyers get involved and custody is formalized, Lily is going to have questions. She's going to want to know why her mother chose to leave. And I need all of us to be very careful about how we answer those questions. We're not going to vilify Christine, I assured him. But we're also not going to lie to protect her from the consequences of her choices. Fair enough, Marcus agreed. But remember that Christine is still Lily's mother. However this ends, Lily will carry her relationship with Christine for the rest of her life. What we say and don't say now will shape how she understands herself and her worth. We need to be very careful. He was right and I knew it. Children of divorce often internalize their parents' failures as their own inadequacy, develop beliefs about their lovability based on how their parents chose to love or not love them. Whatever happened between Christine and Marcus, however this situation resolved, we would need to protect Lily's sense of self while still giving her age-appropriate truth. That night, after Lily had gone to bed and Marcus had retreated to the guest room with his laptop to compose the difficult email, Gerald and I sat in our bedroom processing the day's revelations. She's really going to do it, Gerald said, staring at the ceiling. Christine is going to choose the job over her family. I think she already has, I replied. The job is just the excuse, the rationalization that makes abandonment sound like professional advancement. That's harsh. It's true. I rolled onto my side to look at him. Our daughter is running away from a life she can't handle, and she's dressing it up in language about career opportunities and self-actualization. But the bottom line is that she's choosing to leave her child, and no amount of therapy speak changes that fundamental reality. Gerald was quiet, and in the darkness I couldn't read his expression. Do you think we failed her somehow? Raised her to value the wrong things? The question had been haunting me since this all began. Had my pride in Christine's achievements, my encouragement of her ambition, somehow created a woman who couldn't balance professional success with personal relationships? Had I modeled something unhealthy in my own life that she'd internalized and amplified? I think we raised her in a world that tells women they can have it all without acknowledging the cost of trying, I said slowly. We told her to dream big and work hard and never accept limitations. We just didn't prepare her for what happens when those dreams collide with the reality of a child who needs more than quality time and carefully scheduled activities. So it is our fault. No. I said it firmly. Christine is an adult making adult choices. She could choose differently. She could choose to find meaning in motherhood alongside her career. She could choose to value daily presence over executive titles. The fact that she's not making those choices is on her, not us. But the doubt lingered, as I suspected it would for a long time. Every parent questioned whether they'd done enough, taught enough, loved enough. Every parent wondered if their children's failures reflected their own inadequacies magnified through the generation. The next morning, Marcus emerged from the guest room looking haggard. I sent it. The email. Told Christine that I support her taking the Singapore job, but that Lily stays with me in California full-time. Offered reasonable visitation. Summers and holidays if Christine wants them, but made clear that split custody across continents isn't an option. How did she respond? I asked, pouring him coffee. She hasn't yet. But she will, and it won't be good. He was right. Christine's response came 3 hours later, while we were all attempting normalcy through a trip to the local park. Marcus's phone buzzed insistently in his pocket, and he stepped away to read the message. When he returned, his face had gone pale. She's furious. Says I'm being controlling and patriarchal. That I'm trying to punish her for pursuing her career by using Lily as leverage. She's threatening to fight for primary custody, to bring up every time I traveled for work or wasn't present during Lily's early years. Can she win? Gerald asked practically. If it goes to court? Marcus shook his head slowly. I don't think so. I've been the primary parent for the last 3 years since I went part-time. I have documentation of that. But she can make it ugly. She can drag this out, cost us both a fortune in legal fees, put Lily through hell in the process. Then we prepare for ugly, I said. We document everything. We build the case that Lily's best interests are served by staying in her home, in her school, with the parent who's been present and engaged. Over on the playground, Lily was climbing the jungle gym with fierce concentration, unaware that her future was being negotiated through angry emails and tactical positioning. She'd worn her favorite dress today, purple with sparkly butterflies, and her hair was in the elaborate braids I'd learned to do from YouTube tutorials. She looked like any other 7-year-old enjoying a sunny afternoon, betraying nothing of the turmoil beneath her carefully maintained composure. Marcus sat heavily on a park bench. This isn't how it was supposed to go. We had a plan. We were going to handle this like mature adults, put Lily first, minimize the damage. And now Christine is talking about custody battles and evidence gathering, and Lily is going to be caught in the crossfire. Unless Christine backs down, Gerald pointed out. Unless she realizes that fighting for custody she doesn't actually want, just to avoid feeling like the bad guy, isn't worth the cost to everyone involved. But we all knew Christine well enough to doubt she'd back down easily. She'd always been someone who needed to win, who couldn't tolerate the feeling of losing or being forced into decisions she didn't want. Even if fighting for custody was ultimately pointless, even if she had no real desire to parent Lily full-time, she might pursue it simply because backing down felt like admitting defeat. The days that followed were tense with waiting. Christine's daily calls continued, but now they carried an edge, her voice tight with suppressed anger as she spoke to Lily. Marcus stopped taking her calls, communicating only through email and text, every exchange carefully documented. On the 8th day of what was supposed to be a 2-week visit, Christine made her decision. She'd accepted the Singapore position. She'd be staying permanently. She wanted Lily for summers and alternating holidays, plus video calls twice a week. She'd rent a larger apartment in Singapore with a room for Lily, would enroll her in an international school during summer visits, would maintain as much presence in her daughter's life as geography allowed. It was a proposal that sounded reasonable on paper, that acknowledged the reality of the situation while attempting to preserve some version of the mother-daughter relationship. It was also, fundamentally, an acknowledgement that Christine was choosing her career over daily motherhood, dressing up abandonment in the language of modern co-parenting. Marcus sat at our kitchen table reading and reiterating the email, his expression cycling through grief and relief and something that might have been bitter satisfaction. She's really doing it. She's really staying. How do we tell Lily? I asked, the question that had been haunting me since this all began. Carefully, Marcus said. Honestly but carefully. She deserves the truth, but in a way she can process at 7 years old. We decided to tell her together that evening after dinner, in the familiar safety of our living room. Marcus and I sat on the couch while Lily settled in the armchair with Peanut, her small face already showing apprehension. She'd learned over the past week to read the energy in a room, to sense when adults were about to deliver difficult news. Sweetheart, Marcus began, his voice gentle but not falsely cheerful. I need to talk to you about Mom and what's happening with our family. Is she coming home? Lily asked directly, cutting through any preamble. Marcus shook his head. No, honey. She's not. Mom has been offered an amazing job in Singapore, and she's decided to accept it. She's going to stay there permanently. Lily absorbed this information with frightening stillness, her expression barely changing. So she's leaving us. She's not leaving you, Marcus clarified quickly. She's making a different choice about where she lives and works, but she's still your mom and she still loves you very much. But she's choosing to stay there instead of coming home. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, eerily calm. She's choosing her job over me. The blunt assessment, the childish clarity that cut through all the careful adult language to the heart of the matter, left Marcus momentarily speechless. I leaned forward, catching Lily's attention. Your mom is making choices about her own life, about what she needs to be happy and healthy. Those choices mean she won't be living in the same house as you, but they don't mean she doesn't love you. Sometimes adults make decisions that are hard for kids to understand. I understand fine, Lily said, her voice still eerily level. Mom doesn't want to be my mom anymore. At least not the everyday kind. She wants to be the fun mom who visits sometimes and brings presents, but doesn't have to do the boring stuff like making lunches and helping with homework. The accuracy of her assessment, the way she'd somehow intuited exactly what Christine wanted, was devastating. Marcus pulled her from the chair into his lap despite her being really too big for it anymore, holding her close as her composure finally cracked and tears came. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry you're going through this. But I promise you I'm not going anywhere. You and me, we're going to be okay. We're going to figure out this new version of our family, and it's going to be okay. But what about Mom? Lily asked through tears. What if she changes her mind in Singapore and wants to come back? What if she misses me? Then we'll figure that out too, Marcus assured her. But for now, this is what's happening. Mom is staying in Singapore. You're staying here with me. And Grandma and Grandpa are going to help us transition back home and get settled into our new normal. She cried for a long time, the grief finally finding its release after days of careful control. We held her, the three of us, while she mourned the family structure she'd known, the mother she'd wanted, the normal that would never return. Later, after she'd exhausted herself and fallen asleep on the couch, Marcus carried her upstairs to bed. Gerald and I cleaned up the dinner dishes in heavy silence, both of us processing the finality of what had just happened. Christine had made her choice. She was staying in Singapore. She was choosing her career, her independence, her vision of the life she wanted over daily motherhood. I kept trying to understand it, to find empathy for my daughter's perspective. I knew about the suffocation of early motherhood, the way identity could get subsumed by the endless demands of caring for small humans. I understood career ambition, the desire to prove yourself in professional spaces, to be valued for your mind and skills rather than your reproductive capacity. I even understood the appeal of running away, of hitting the reset button on a life that had become unbearable. But I couldn't get past the bottom line. Christine had a child. That child needed her mother. And no amount of rationalization or self-actualization language changed the fact that Christine was choosing to leave Lily, was prioritizing her own needs over her daughter's security. Gerald must have read my thoughts because he pulled me into an embrace, something we didn't do often anymore after 4 decades of marriage, but that felt necessary in this moment. We stood in our kitchen holding each other while upstairs our son-in-law kept vigil over our grieving granddaughter, and halfway around the world our daughter slept soundly in her Singapore apartment, free at last from the obligations that had trapped her. The next morning began the process of transition back to real life. Marcus needed to return to his house in Mill Valley, to reclaim his space and start building the single-parent household that would be Lily's primary home. We'd kept her cocooned at our place for over a week, but eventually normal life had to resume. Lily was quiet over breakfast, moving through morning routines with mechanical precision. When Marcus mentioned going home, she looked up with something like panic in her eyes. "Can't I stay here longer? With Grandma and Grandpa?" Marcus knelt beside her chair. "I know this is scary, sweetheart, but our house is your home. Your room, your toys, your school and friends. We need to go back and start figuring out what life looks like now. But everything there will remind me of Mom. At your house, I can pretend things are just different for a little while instead of changed forever." The distinction she drew between different and changed showed a sophisticated understanding of impermanence that no 7-year-old should have to possess. Marcus looked at me helplessly, and I made a decision. "How about Grandpa and I come stay with you for a few days? Help you both get settled? We can make the transition together." Relief flooded Marcus's face. "Would you? That would be incredibly helpful." So we packed bags and loaded them into Marcus's car, said goodbye to Biscuit with promises to return soon, and made the drive to Mill Valley. The house Christine and Marcus had purchased 5 years ago sat in a quiet neighborhood full of young families, the kind of place where children rode bikes in the street and neighbors knew each other's names. It was a beautiful house, well-maintained and carefully decorated, every room showing Christine's eye for design and her commitment to creating the perfect family environment. Walking into it knowing she wasn't coming back felt surreal. Her presence was everywhere, in the gallery wall of family photos, in the carefully organized kitchen with her preferred brands of coffee and tea, in the master bedroom where her clothes still hung in the closet and her jewelry sat in its box on the dresser. Marcus stood in the hallway looking around as if seeing it for the first time. "I need to pack up her stuff, send it to Singapore or put it in storage. But I don't know how to do that without making it real." "It's already real," Gerald said gently. "Leaving her things here doesn't change that. But you don't have to do it today or even this week. Give yourself time." Lily had disappeared upstairs to her room, and I followed to check on her. She sat on her bed surrounded by stuffed animals and art supplies, her face thoughtful rather than sad. "You doing okay up here?" She nodded slowly. "It's weird being home but not the same home. Like everything looks right but feels wrong." "That's a pretty good description of how things are going to feel for a while," I admitted, sitting beside her. "The outside stuff might look normal, but the inside feeling is different. Eventually the inside will catch up and start feeling normal again, but it takes time." "How much time?" "I don't know, honey. Different for everyone. But I promise it does happen. The weird wrong feeling doesn't last forever." She leaned against me, her small body warm and solid and real. "I'm glad you're staying for a few days. It makes it less scary." Over the next 3 days, we established new routines in Marcus and Lily's house. Gerald and I took over the guest room, which had a distant view of the San Francisco Bay, and shelves full of Christine's abandoned hobby projects. We handled morning breakfast while Marcus dealt with work calls. I walked Lily to and from school, standing awkwardly among the other mothers who clearly wanted to ask questions but didn't quite dare. Word had spread through the parent network that Christine was in Singapore, though whether anyone knew she wasn't coming back remained unclear. The other mothers smiled at me with varying degrees of sympathy and curiosity, their careful questions about Christine's trip deflected with vague answers about work opportunities and extended stays. On the third evening after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus received a video call request from Christine. He stared at his laptop screen for a long moment before accepting, and I moved to give him privacy. "Wait," he called before I could leave. "Stay. Please. I need a witness for this." So Gerald and I positioned ourselves just off camera while Marcus's screen filled with Christine's face. She looked good, rested in a way I hadn't seen in years, her features relaxed and her eyes bright. The Singapore apartment visible behind her was sleek and modern, floor-to-ceiling windows showing a nighttime cityscape of lights and towers. "Marcus," she said, her voice warm but cautious. "Thank you for taking my call. I know you've been avoiding me." We agreed to communicate through email and text for documentation purposes, Marcus reminded her, his tone carefully neutral. "What did you need to discuss that couldn't be handled that way?" "I wanted to talk about Lily." Christine leaned toward the camera, her expression earnest. "I need you to understand that choosing this job doesn't mean I'm abandoning her. I'm trying to build a life where I can be my best self, And that version of me will be a better mother than the miserable trapped woman I was becoming in California. You're in Singapore and she's in California, Marcus pointed out. Geography matters when it comes to parenting. You can't be an active daily parent from another hemisphere. I can video call every day. I can visit several times a year. I can have her here for summers. Plenty of families make long-distance co-parenting work. Those families usually have both parents wanting that arrangement, Marcus countered. Lily doesn't want you to be in Singapore. She wants you home. Christine's expression hardened slightly. What Lily wants isn't always what's best for her in the long run. If I stayed in California being miserable and resentful, that would poison her childhood in different ways. This way, she has a father who's fully present and a mother who's emotionally healthy even if physically distant. From my position off camera, I bit back the urge to interrupt, to challenge her self-serving rationalization. Gerald's hand on my shoulder kept me silent, reminding me this conversation needed to be between Christine and Marcus. I've consulted with a family lawyer here, Christine continued. I'm prepared to formalize custody arrangements that are fair and put Lily's interests first. I'm not going to fight you for primary custody. I know that doesn't make sense given my work situation, but I want meaningful parenting time, and I want input into major decisions about her education and welfare. That all sounds reasonable, Marcus agreed carefully. I'm willing to work out details through our attorneys. But Christine, I need you to understand something. Lily is hurt and angry. She feels abandoned regardless of how we try to frame this. You choosing to stay in Singapore is going to affect your relationship with her for years, maybe forever. Are you prepared for that? Christine's composure wavered slightly. I'm prepared to do the work of repairing our relationship. I'm prepared to give her space to feel her feelings while also being consistent in my efforts to maintain connection. I've already found a therapist here who specializes in long-distance parenting. I'm not taking this lightly. The fact that she'd found a therapist specializing in long-distance parenting, that such a specialty even existed, spoke to how common this scenario had apparently become. 6 months passed before Christine returned to California for her first visit. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon, wheeling designer luggage through the arrival gate looking polished and confident in a way that seemed almost foreign. Marcus and I brought Lily to the airport, watching our granddaughter's face cycle through emotions she couldn't name as her mother approached. The reunion was awkward, stilted. Christine knelt for an embrace that Lily accepted but didn't return with any enthusiasm. They went to dinner while Marcus and I waited nearby, giving them space but staying close in case Lily needed rescue. When we collected her 2 hours later, she was quiet, thoughtful in a way that seemed older than her 8 years. Over the following days, Christine tried. She attended Lily's ballet recital, brought elaborate gifts from Singapore, took her to expensive restaurants. But something fundamental had shifted. Lily was polite but distant, going through the motions of having a mother without the ease of genuine connection. She called Christine by name now instead of Mom, a small rebellion that Christine pretended not to notice. The pattern continued through subsequent visits. Christine came every few months, stayed in hotels, scheduled quality time that felt more like supervised visitation than parenting. Lily participated dutifully, but Gerald and I watched her slowly detach, protecting herself from disappointment by expecting nothing. Marcus flourished in ways none of us anticipated. Single parenting suited him, gave him purpose and focus that had been missing. He and Lily developed their own rhythms, their own traditions. Our house became their second home, Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations expanding to fill the space Christine's absence had created. 2 years after Christine left, Lily stopped asking when her mother was coming back. She'd accepted the reality of their relationship, the video calls and summer visits, the mother who existed on screens and during scheduled time but not in daily life. It wasn't what any of us would have chosen, but it was what they'd built from the wreckage. Christine seemed content in Singapore, her career flourishing in ways California had never allowed. She sent photos of her executive office, her waterfront apartment, her expanding professional network. She talked about fulfillment and authenticity and living her truth. She rarely asked detailed questions about Lily's daily life. Standing in the airport watching Christine board her return flight after another brief visit, I held Lily's hand and felt her squeeze back. She was okay, resilient in the way children learn to be when adults fail them. It wasn't the ending I'd wanted, but it was the one we had. Sometimes that has to be enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.